Things to Come, I didn't see Things to Come until some years later after it was released. But I know it had this wonderful H.G. Wells story behind it. It's an H.G. Wells, based on an H.G. Wells novel, and I've always admired H.G. Wells. And I think it shows the possibilities of what the future may bring. And it's a wonderful cavalcade from the wars we have in present day to the future. And I think that colorization will give it new life and a new audience. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But Korda made some fascinating films in the black and white days. So I think they deserve to reach a new audience as well.
Well, we met Ray originally to talk about putting some of his own movies in color. The classic 20 Million Miles to Earth, and a number of his other films. And he came to us and said, hey, I have some personal favorite movies from the 1930s where I know the original directors and producers wanted to do them in color, and do you think we could put these in color? And these are movies such as She by Marion C. Cooper and Things to Come. Fantastic movies, but could really be boosted by adding color to them. And so we said, absolutely, Ray, and that started the project.
Since we're working with somebody else's creation, I really want to maintain the integrity of the original design. And that's where I can take clues from, little minute objects in the background, maybe little statues that I know should be a certain color because I've seen them, dishware, paintings on the wall, the subjects of the paintings, if it's a floral, if it's a landscape, you kind of know the feel of that room and how it should be designed. And costume designing is easy. I mean, there's just tons of reference on 40s styles, 50s styles, 30s, and the colors that were popular back then.
There it is. You were right. A plane once more. And you told me we couldn't fly anymore.
There's a big technical advance in colorization today, and I think Legend Films have advanced it enormously. The early color of maybe 10, 15 years ago, where they tried to colorize black and white films, I remember seeing Mighty Joe Young and King Kong. Unfortunately, the greens were all the same. It lost all that wonderful doré look of perspective of going back in the jungle, because the greens were almost the same color in the foreground as in the background. And a lot of it gave away the matte shots. So many matte shots were in Kong and in Mighty Joe Young, and it made them look flat. It made them look like what they are, matte shots. So I think this new colorization process can have such a wonderful variety of densities and depth that you're able to produce this doré effect of looking back into the picture with perspective, aerial perspective.
When people think of high definition and film resolution, they usually think about how big the screen is. The screen behind me is a 42-inch high definition screen, but that really doesn't provide the true quality factor. What's more important really is the depth of color, the depth and grayscale. And that's transferred into a contrast ratio. What Legend Films does is produces colorized film at a contrast ratio that's really higher than anything that you can get in high definition. We're actually producing colorization with 64,000 levels of gray. In the old days, we used to use 256 levels of gray, so we're 250 times the resolution that we were back in the early 90s.
Ray came down into our office here at Legend Films and sat for hours behind the computer with our creative director, Rosemary, and the two of them created the look and feel for what you see on the screen.
How about the highlights on their face? Is it
like a moonlight or
Could be a street light.
A tremendous amount goes into the colorization of each movie. If you think about it, every movie runs at 24 frames per second. So the average movie has well over 100,000 frames, and we color each one of those. Each frame has to be colored beautifully and look like a perfect picture in itself.
I think these foreground pieces.
when I was coloring with Ray, it was very important to him that things in the background stayed in the background, that the color was used appropriately, the saturations he was concerned about, that the foreground items would be the most saturated, and as it went back in perspective, you know, we would dilute the color a little bit, and that really made it realistic.
As a technologist and having been in colorization for 20 years, having dealt with the critics in the early 90s, and today winning acceptance for the technology because of the higher standard of quality that we can produce, it's very satisfying. But probably the pinnacle of my career in colorization is winning the endorsement of Ray Harryhausen. I don't think anyone could ask for a better endorsement. After all, you have people like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and George Lucas, who really attribute a lot of their success to Ray. And I think that is very, very significant to everybody at Legend Films, and in particular me.
So that these would stand out with reds and greens.
The spirit in that man, he's like a 12-year-old boy. You know, his imagination and his enthusiasm was wonderful, and everybody picked up on it. He was so excited to bring color to these movies. He thought it would bring these old classic works to a new generation.
He felt that these movies, using this technology, could now look like they were actually shot in color.
Who are you, I said?
The law. Law and sanity.
I am the law here.
I remember you. He's the first real aviator that has come this way for years.
The way you swagger, you don't seem to realize you're under arrest.
What happens to me is a small affair. The new world of United Airmen will finish you.
Wells' predictions of what happens in the future, I think, are very profound and very astute for this age. So I'm looking forward to a rejuvenation of this wonderful film, Things to Come.
I want to be one of the first two human beings to go around the moon.
Make an end to this progress now.
There's nothing wrong in suffering.
If you suffer for a purpose, we go now. Boys, that's gun.